how policies shape our economy. And today it's interesting to look at Nigeria's business environment. Whatever we do as a nation, if the business environment is very welcoming and receptive, it attracts investments and unlocks the economic growth potentials. And so today we'll be focusing on the activities of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, driven by the Enabling Business Environment Secretariat, which is also short-formed as EBES. With us to look at the current National Action Plan 5.0 and improving Nigeria's business environments is Mr. Ayokunnu Ojeniyi. He's the project manager for EBES. Good morning and nice to have you on the show.
Good morning, Otta. It's such a great pleasure to be with you.
Yes. Thank you. So this has been one of the major thrusts of this administration in improving the business environment for SMEs, for Nigerians, making it easy to set up businesses, carry out business activities, and indeed deepen economic activities. And you've had the National Action Plan 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and now you have the National Action Plan 5.0. But of course, the disruption came, which was the COVID-19 pandemic, and you had to engage through the media to tell Nigerians that it will still go on, but you would continue to engage all stakeholders and leverage the digital platforms. So can you share with us the experience so far in driving the NAP 5.0 in improving Nigeria's business environment?
Thank you once again, Otto. The National Action Plan is a homegrown 60-day accelerator program that was approved by the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council to push our priority reforms within a 60-day window. And it's very important for us to set goals and to have a specific time frame for the implementation of those goals. Otherwise, I mean, any target that doesn't have a goal or that doesn't have a timeline is just a wish. So the next 60-day timeline, we've had the first one, as you said, in 2017, and now 2020, we are on the fifth cycle. The NAP 5 started in February 5, 2020, but COVID struck and we had to suspend implement the 10th of March, and that was the 30th day into the program. But we're glad that with the restrictions lifted now, we resumed implementation again in June 29. But while the lockdown lasted, one of the things we were able to leverage on is technology. Interestingly, some of our MDAs, like the Corporate Affairs Commission, Immigration Service, Federal Land Revenue Service, they've already gone some rungs up in the automation process. So it wasn't, while there was, of course, some impact, we're still grateful that some of the reforms that have been done in terms of automation, like business registration and corporation, business corporation, were still able to be done, albeit at a faster level, because at a slower pace because of the COVID. But by and large, the services, the core services were still running, and it's a testimony to what human beings can do when they are faced with the most impossible situation.
Yes. So in terms of the trust of the NAP 5.0, can you just give us an overview of the trust and so far the levels you've been able to achieve now that the restrictions have been eased?
Great. We have a vibrant. Before the lockdown came into force, one of the things we intended to do was to, for example, the Corporate Affairs Commission was supposed to now insert tax and taxation numbers in the certificates of incorporation. Nigerian Immigration Service was also primed to implement what we call the MDAs. And the MDAs is an automated system that makes it possible for travelers. So when anybody's coming to the country, the information about the traveler is already available, and Nigerian Immigration Service was primed to do that in collaboration with some development partners. And so we also had some of the reforms across state government, so Lagos State Judiciary, Kano State Judiciary, the Small Claims Court. Part of the target was that the judgments of the Small Claims Court should be uploaded and made available. And I should quickly say that the Small Claims Court is one of our is one of our priority reforms because it gives opportunities for businesses to be able to approach a court for claims low between 0 and 5 million naira and get accelerated hearing and judgments even within 60 days. And we are glad to note that we've recorded some progress. At least more than 60% of the cases brought before the small claims court in Lagos State were actually decided within the 60 days. And so to promote transparency, the judgments of those courts were supposed to be made available online so that those who would enforce it will be able to enforce it. So this part of the reforms were prior to the lockdown, we're not able to achieve some of it, but we are glad that since the lockdown was lifted, we've recorded significant progress in some of those reforms. For example, the Nigerian Immigration Service successfully installed the Midas platform at our international airports, and that will not only boost security, but it will also make it possible for visa arrival project process to be smoother and faster for travelers. You will recall that a lot of people had shared their misgivings when visa arrival was extended to some African countries, and people spoke about the security implications of that policy. But with the Midas in place at the international airports, some of those concerns will now be addressed. So we're glad that we're on a sure path to completion, and we are glad that we'll be able to come up with the results at the end of this exercise for the benefit of all Nigerians.
Yes, nice to hear that there's some level of traction in the Corporate Affairs Commission, which we'll still come to, and indeed the Nigerian Immigration Service. But for other MDAs and critical ones, how was interaction, particularly during the full lockdown experience? How were we able to leverage digital platforms to continue to have those interactions, bringing to the fore the customs service, bringing to the fore additional in the Federal Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investments? How was the coordination and what were the interesting learning points from this experience?
Thank you so much. I mean, agencies like the customs, those operating in maritime environments, as you would recall, Mr. President had already categorized them as essential service. So they were actually operating while the lockdown lasted. But for the larger ministries, departments, and agencies, while there was initially a slow start because this came suddenly on us, but it was interesting to know that a lot of people were now forced to embrace technology. I was Ram Emanuel, former Chief of Staff to President Obama and Chicago Mayor. They said that you should not allow any crisis situation to go to. And we are so glad that this COVID situation, while I mean it has tremendous and unprecedented impact on business environment, we are glad that it has also created room for agencies to also embrace technology, some of the automation policies that we've been trying to implement over years. Now, the crisis situation has made that very urgent, and agencies have been able to address. So meetings were going on. We thank God for video conferencing facilities. You and I were speaking today because of that facility. And so the cabinet was meeting, the agencies, we had calls, particularly my own team. We met every day at 11 o'clock to review the previous day's activities, so that whatever lag that might have happened, we'll be able to spot it and come up with remedial action. So it's an interesting time, and we are glad that we are able to seize this opportunity to implement some of the reforms that have proven difficult in times past.
Yeah, you say it's an interesting time, and quite interesting to see that during the period, the Corporate Affairs Commission was, like you earlier stated, able to make that provision for adding the tax identification number for the Certificate of Incorporation for companies. We say that that's part of the very, very remarkable work done by PEBEC and PEBEC to continue to create an enabler for businesses in the country.
Absolutely, and this is remarkable because this was also achieved during the lockdown. I mean, and I have to salute the hard work by the Corporate Affairs Commission and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. This is a story of collaboration that can happen among MDAs. It was pleasant to see I could even remember there was a time that we had to 1 a.m. we were on Zoom calls trying to see that these reforms came into place. I was pleasantly surprised. You know, some of those things that we thought were important. Yes, yeah. It was unbelievable, but so it's a courage. It's a testament to the collaboration that can happen. You know, part of the reforms that was done in the previous years was that the tax identification number will be issued at the point of you getting your copy of CFC, your CAC registration number. But we thought that was a bit tacky, and that was also subject to some errors. Because you have two platforms and sometimes the integration might face some challenge. So we thought in its spirit of improving and continuous improvement, we thought it was important that now this Corporate Affairs Commission certificates issued by the CAC would have the tax certification. And this has obvious benefits for the Nigerian economy. And it's not just to make taxpayers pay tax, is that now governments will also know the citizens, that the businesses that are in existence, and will reward good behavior. In some of the other climes, developed world, we see that governments came up with interventions for taxpayers. Some of them got rebates, but in Nigeria, because that infrastructure is largely not available, it was difficult to even target and to reward good behavior by some, particularly those SMEs. The larger corporates was probably easy for you to identify them, but this kind of initiative would make it possible for us to know who the businesses are and to reward good behaviors in times like this, when if and whenever it happens again in the future.
Yes, I mean that's laudable in terms of the cooperation between the Corporate Affairs Commission and the Federal Inland Revenue Service to enable businesses get the TIN when they get their Certificate of Incorporation. But one of the major concerns during the period of the full lockdown was from a lot of associate lawyers and all those who involved in trying to get business registered or confirm issues around businesses from the CAC. They said the whole process was very, very tedious, and that again brought to the fore the need to provide seamless operations and service leveraging digital during the period. Did you also get those feedbacks and complaints, and how is eBay's engaging CAC on this going forward?
Indeed, we got it. Part of the challenges with incorporation at that time was that CAC wasn't one of the essential, wasn't categorized as an essential service. So critical fraction of the number of the personnel of that commission could not make it to the office. So things like post-incorporation could not be done. And of course, some were in places where internet facility wasn't so strong, particularly those outside, those in cities that do not have significant penetration of broadband. And so there were hiccups, and we got it. ReportGov platform, we were inundated with such requests. But as I said, what was important was our response, and the response of the company were given. But given that we were still resolved, and the agency resolved that. So there were a lot of backlogs as a result of that, and it was. But as soon as the lockdown was lifted, the backlog was treated, and we're having faster compliance to the service level agreements that the SCC has set. But again, this also creates opportunity as you have threats and challenges like this. It also gives room for opportunity. So now the reform will go to the next level, where you know that, okay, well, it's not just enough to automate, to make automation possible within the four walls of your organization. How well will your workers, if and when they're unable to come into the office, how well will we be able to connect to that infrastructure? And so those are the conversations that are coming up, and those are the things that COVID will not make possible. And agencies gladly are now beginning to respond to that.
Yeah, because it really helps what you're doing to reinforce the need for investing in digital technology further, deepening the investments in digital technology, where, like you said, even if you have 80% of staff of the CAC not in the office, they can operate with the required secured equipments and digital platforms to respond at every request, because during periods like that, people want to carry out business activities, and the CAC plays a very critical role. Obviously, also should be placed in the priority list also going forward. Those are learning points like you said, and we hope that that will form the whole basis. But let's look at PEBEC activities across the nation. You talked about also supporting and partnering with subnationals to improve their ease of doing business index, and you even have an index for states. I even know that Ekiti State is one state that says they want to be top 3 in terms of the ease of doing business, and that's one thing. At least you're able to create that healthy competition among states. You have this activity, the lituation, and it's been across the geopolitical zones. Have you been able to cover which other zones have you not covered yet? And what has been the experience with the zones you've already covered?
Great. So we started this subnational lituation tour basically as an opportunity to listen to the private sector as a lever to implementing reforms and being able to track those reforms that have been implemented. So we kicked off in Lagos. We started in Lagos in October of 2020 and 2019, I should say, in Lagos State. And from there, we moved to the Southeast, where we had the regional workshop, regional event in Owerri. 5 days later, we moved to North Central, where we're in Kwara to be with the business community. And in each of those lituation events, the host governor is always available, or at least the deputy governor would be in presence, would be in attendance to listen to the concerns of the private sector. And from Kwara, we moved to Ado-Ekiti, the Southwest, for the Southwest event, and we were hosted by His Excellency Governor Kade Fayemi. And from there, we now moved in December, we moved to Akwa Ibom, where we had the South-South region. So it was a busy period for us. And in February, we had the FCT lituation event hosted by Honorable Minister for the Federal Capital Territory. But that was where we were able to stop before COVID struck. Before even COVID became mainstream, we needed to go to the Northeast, Northwest. But at that time, Lassa fever had reared its ugly head. So we took a momentary stop. And now we are considering options of having those events online now, because the things that we never thought were possible are now made possible. So one of the things the lituation events gave us the opportunity was to listen to the concerns of the private sector. Yeah. And we're glad that some of the results we've achieved some of the results. We've achieved some meaningful movements in that regard. As you rightly said, Ekiti State wants to be one of the top 3 among the states, and that must have motivated the decision of the state government to reduce the right-of-way charges significantly to make it possible for broadband to get to states like that. Kaduna State has also entirely waived the cost. Kwara State has done the same thing. So we're seeing states beginning to take on some of the issues that had long defied the business environment. At that time, it cost several thousands of naira to lay a kilometer of fiber, but we see states outrightly waiving that cost, and some even bringing it as low as 1 naira, and in some cases 145 naira. So this is some results that the yearnings, because while we're in those lituation events, the public sector, particularly the tech sector in Lagos and some other states, made a strong case of this for this, and coupled with the efforts of the Honorable Minister of Communications, the Digital Economy, and the Nigerian Governors Forum, this collaboration produced the results that we needed. So it was an opportunity to really listen, and not just to sit in Abuja and formulate policies that don't actually speak to the concerns of the business. And there were issues that were even solved at a point. We had cases where people were able to ask questions, and we found cases where the governors, and in the case of FCT, where the Federal Capital Territory, the Honorable Minister of the FCT was able to solve instantly the challenge raised, the issue raised by a member of the audience. So it's been a great, and we are exploring options of covering Northeast, Northwest, and it's interesting to even note that the subnational technical working group will be meeting online for the first time next week, and that will bring a whole lot of states together so that we can now do some peer review and see how we can accelerate these reforms in view of the pandemic that is now becoming a new norm.
Yes, a new norm. And it's very important that states are at the forefront of driving the doing business reforms to make Nigeria an attractive place for business investments and activities. So let's take a short break, and then we'll return and continue this conversation on the improving Nigeria's business environment.
We have a vibrant team tracking the ReportGov.NG. When complaints come in, there's a 72-hour timeline, and agencies are all aware. They have teams that have been trained and have been equipped to handle these reforms. So it's been a really good collaboration. They're now getting used to the process, so more and more agencies are used to giving feedback and promptly responding. So private sector is beginning to see, they're beginning to, the day we launched the app, the very next day somebody tried it and was like, couldn't really believe that it was actually resolved. But it has been ongoing for a year, but the publicity that it's getting now with the launch of the app that we did in March is making sure that more and more people, we need that voice of private sector, that voice of feedback, whether it's a complaint or a compliment, because please do compliment MDAs. When you see these reforms that they're doing, everybody needs the encouragement. But we're able to have the data to identify critical pain points and move to consequence management and make sure that they're resolved speedily. I think that's really one of the most important things for us. It also builds on the Executive Order 1 that was signed in 2017 to make sure that those reforms are sustainable and are deep.
All right, that was your boss, Dr. Jumoke Duale, who is the Executive Secretary of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, chaired by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, and also Senior Special Assistant to the President on Trade and Investments. She was talking about the ReportGov app, which was launched last year, which we were there to look at it. And it has been remarkable what has been said in terms of it being able to create the opportunity for people to leverage digital platforms, to lay complaints, to share their experience with MDAs across board. And this also brings to the fore the need to collaborate, that's collaboration amongst the MDAs, and also the issue of consequence management, like he said. So how has it been in terms of the feedback from people and then being able to bring the respective MDAs to take action where necessary so far?
Thank you very much. I mean, the ReportGov platform is very dear to my heart. It was my entry point to the public service, and for which so it's very close to my heart. Yes, so we thought it was important for us to sort of outsource the monitoring and evaluation to the members of the public who on a daily basis engage with the agencies. I mean, I don't do corporate business incorporation on a daily basis. I don't go to the ports on a daily basis. So the private sector that interface with these agencies are better placed to give us the feedback. And so we thought it was important for us to create such platform where people, wherever in the world they are, could just go to www.reportgov.ng, or could they simply just download from their mobile phone, the App Store, right? And so we've had interesting feedback from that platform. And it's important to say that it's not only cases of complaints that we've received. We've also received cases where people give kudos to the MDAs when they exceeded their expectations. And we've had a significant level of resolution complaints. Our resolution rate is up north, upwards of 80%, which means that more than 4 out of every 5 complaints that we received were successfully resolved. And we have an SLA to resolve cases in 72 hours. You know, some cases are usually might take longer than that because of investigation, but we remain committed to making sure that reforms, complaints are resolved within that timeline. And during COVID, we got a lot of complaints. The lockdown in particular, we got complaints about people who faced difficulties moving from one point to the other. We also recently had a case from the ports, the delays in the ports, but we are glad that once those complaints come, one of the good things about ReportGov.NG is that it gives us opportunities to know where the problem is cropping up. So I didn't go to the ports, but once we received a number of complaints from the ports, we knew that there was something going on, and we were able to move. And we're glad that one of the bonded terminals that was not operating while cargo was attracting demurrage, that issue had been resolved. and people are now able to clear some of them. So it's been an interesting experience, and we encourage people to lodge these complaints. If you don't lodge your complaints, there's no way we can know where the issues are. There's no way we can intervene. Sometimes people will generally speak about the poor service in government, but it's incumbent on us as citizens, as part of our civic responsibility, to speak up when we face service delivery issues. And because that feedback is important, and it creates a loop where your complaints gives us an opportunity for us to intervene, and that way we can improve the service. So we encourage people to go to that platform, www.ReportGov.NG, lodge your complaints, and you will be sure that someone on the other end will take up your complaints. And we've had interesting feedback. People have been amazed that people from the federal government can actually call you to follow up on your complaints. So that's the promise, and that's the ideal that we subscribe to, and we are committed. It's part of the challenges that we crop up to keep up to that promise.
The ideal is there, which is a nice one. But let's look at the compliance level. In terms of MDAs, what's the percentage when it comes to compliance level of all those that have signed up to be part of this service? Because it's very important.
So we've taken a staggered approach from project management perspective, and we have 19 MDAs right on that platform now. We started with 9, and when we achieved some level of cooperation among the MDAs, we move, because sometimes it's one thing for you to have technology in that, but technology essentially is laid on the existing framework of service delivery. So sometimes we need to even sit with them to see how we can improve the service delivery. So we've had a fairly good response. Like I said, we've had 80%, more than 80% of the complaints resolved, and it's because part of the model is that once people lodge their complaints, we receive it at the PEBEC. Some of my colleagues are trained to now forward those complaints to relevant MDAs, and we follow up. We call, we send letters when necessary, so that we can keep up to that promise. Because the credibility of the platform is at stake if people go there and they are unable to have their complaints resolved. So it's a commitment, and I'm glad that agencies are gradually taking up the responsibility of fix. I mean, and I can mainly mention the stories that we've had consistent progress from across all the MDAs since the app was launched. Agencies like the Standards Organization of Nigeria, Corporate Affairs Commission, Immigration Service, Customs Service. It's been an interesting story, because the reform champions in these agencies take ownership of the resolution of this complaint. Ours is just a follow-up to see that these reforms are done. So it's a testimony to what can happen in a public service.
Yeah, I must say that, yes, I see that activity, the participation and partnership with the private sector reform champions, working with EBAs and PEBEC to really drive the process. And we just want to use the opportunity to once again appeal to all MDAs to really support these efforts, because it's very important. MDAs are there for the nation, the interest of the country. So service is very important. And yes, we know that those who do well being rewarded by the PEBEC Awards. I mean, it's very interesting. And also those who do not want to comply, there should be consequence management. And we hope that that consequence management will continue to serve as a deterrent for not doing what they are set up for. Now, let's look at the outlook for the remaining part of the year. I know that part of the agenda or the drive is to see that Nigeria is among the top 100 when it comes to doing business. So you can looking at your team, there's much need for capacity building, for more investment in technology, and even funding. What are those additional issues that can really unlock Nigeria's opportunity to be that top 100 when we still look at the index, the World Bank index on doing business?
Thank you very much. Our reforms are usually take 3 shapes: people reforms, process reforms, and infrastructure. And where we see a lot of challenges. I mean, infrastructure is not something we can fix on a daily as fast as possible. So there's an infrastructure problem that we know. But the process part is also something that we think that there's room for tremendous improvement. And that's what technology comes in So for example, why will you have to go to an agency when from the comfort of your room you can upload your documents and have it treated? right? So that's really where we want to get to. The truth is that we've been able to take some of the easier things. We've been able to implement them over the last 3 years. So we're going into the big league right now, where without technology and without automation and without enforcement of the rules and transparency, we will not be able to achieve. So we recognize the challenge while we've made tremendous progress in the last 3-4 years, we know that there's still a lot more to be. The reason why I want to be in the top 100 is because we should not really be the company of countries that we are around right now, right? So say countries like India, countries like Kenya, who are moved faster. So that's really where we want to get to. And so we are not mindful of the challenges. The federal government is taking on the task of implementing a national single window. That will bring tremendous ease for the import and export of goods. And I believe that's going to be
trade window.
Yeah, national trade window, and that will start. Yes, and as we start with the installation of the scanners, we're expecting that anytime in 2020, the scanners would come at the ports so that it will minimize the need for 100% physical examination of goods. That is that has accounted for the long delay processing of goods at the airport. We expect that, like I said, agencies are now looking at, and not just the federal government, we have states like Lagos State looking at ways of enhancing the land registration, the title registration process, bringing technology. I know there's a vendor now working on that regard, making it possible so that people would be able to, transfer properties between individuals and entities within a matter of days. So those things, and we're also working with our subnational. Like I said, we are meeting online and making sure that some of those things are possible. So the responsibility is clear. It's very challenging, and we always will require the support of the private sector and the fourth estate of the realm, which you represent, to first of all give us the feedback that is necessary, because sometimes you might have what they call selection bias or confirmation bias, and you just essentially talk to people of your own circle. But the private sector and the members of the fourth estate can give us that needed. And when the reforms have been done, it's important for us to also communicate it, because without the validation of the private sector, the reform is actually not done. So while we've been able to achieve some progress, we know that the big work still lies ahead, and we require the cooperation of everybody. And the federal government is clear that this is something that needs to be done. That's the only way we are going to achieve our development objective. Already, the economy is, as people would say, oil is important, but oil is just important for government spending. The bulk of the economy, 90% of the economy is actually the private sector. And you cannot imagine the growth that would happen if the strictures, the constraints that private sector is currently facing is removed. The impact of the massive. And so we are very mindful, and it's a dream, and we are pushing that against all odds to make this possible and to make Nigerians reap the benefits.
Yeah, we take note of your reforms. We take note of the fact that there's need to invest more in technology, deepen the capacity, because of the work you're doing. You need much capacity and much more professionals in to assist this work. While we assure you from the media is always here to support. And we, like you said, communication is very important from your end. But most importantly, the cooperation amongst MDAs is very critical. That will help the process from the customs to the immigration to all relevant agencies. Cooperation is very, very important, Mr. Ayokunnu. But thank you so much for the work you're doing, and we trust that all hands will be on deck to make Nigeria that top 100 spot destination for doing business. It's been nice having Ayokunnu Ojeniyi, Projects Manager, Enabling Business Environment Secretariat at EBASE, that works with the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council to make Nigeria a place for doing business. We hope to have you in subsequent editions to discuss on the progress, particularly on the NAP 5.0 and what to expect next. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was an interesting conversation on Nigeria.
Business environment reforms being carried out by PEBEC and EBASE to make it a very attractive destination in Africa and across the world. This conversation will continue in subsequent editions. We hope to see the progress being made by EBASE. And that will be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. You can log on to our website, www.ProChange.com, to watch our videos with our news reports and analysis. Don't go off, because by 10 a.m. we have the market review and an interesting conversation around the financial market, capital market, as it relates to the economy. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice time and stay safe.